Is going to start. Please take a seat. Pues tú no importa, ¿no? No el otro. Grégory, supongo que aquí es más cómodo. So I'll just leave the microphone to Klaus Sieber, who is going to introduce the speaker of the plenary session. Thanks.
¿Ya les fuiste a decir allá?
Sí, ya les dije, pero nadie se apura. No, pero empieza. Yo voy otra vez.
Como gustes. Sí. Okay. Welcome to our session on archaeological and environmental aspects of historic and prehistoric eruptions. This session is actually one of the topics that triggered the organization of the present meeting. And Professor Grégory Pereira, he and his team of archaeologists, they have made great discoveries in the Sacapu Basin, namely large cities built on very young lava flows. And I think these findings are really extraordinary. I want to underscore this. And Grégory, he is not new to Michoacán. He has been working in Michoacán for 3 decades. He's probably one of the most accomplished archaeologists for this part of Mexico, but he has also worked in other areas of Mexico, in the Maya area and also in central Mexico. He graduated in 1997 from the University of Paris, where he presently presides at cnrs, the Archéologie of the Amériques group. And he has written multiple books or contributed to multiple books, has a very accomplished list of scholarly articles on the subject, and I think in Sacapu they know him as Don Gregorio. So I think I don't need to say more. Please. And I want to say another thing that has nothing to do with this. I was just told that there is a manifestation on the main square, and that some police is also there, and the outcome is uncertain. So I'm mentioning this in case that later you want to walk to your hotel. Just watch out and maybe make a detour or whatever is needed. I just wanted to let you know about this. Grégory, I think the session is yours.
Buenos días a todos y muchas gracias a los organizadores del Congreso. Como Klaus lo indicó, yo soy arqueólogo y pues es primera vez que participo a ese tipo de foro, así que espero que sea de algo de interés para ustedes. Los aspectos de vínculos entre el medio volcánico y la arqueología. También quiero agradecer mucho a Klaus, quien es el responsable de mi presencia aquí, pues me invitó a presentar, a coordinar esta sesión. Entonces, voy a ver cómo funciona esto. Bueno, ya voy a hablarles del aspecto de cómo las sociedades prehispánicas de la región. I'm going to speak in English, sorry. I switch. As many of you have knowledge of that, the area of the Trans-Mexican volcanic belt have a lot of volcanoes, you know that. And you probably know also that in this area flourished a lot of complex Mesoamerican societies that have to deal with this environment, specific environment. And we know that these people have knowledge about the eruptions. Some representations of these eruptions are documented in Codex pictographic manuscript of the 19th century. And you have two examples here of the Popocatépetl, here with a nice butterfly fire symbol indicating the eruption, and here an eruption about in the beginning of the 19th century, 16th century. We also know that some sites were impacted by volcanic eruptions, even if there is not so much, there are few in reality in comparison to the thousands of sites we know. But here two very famous examples. The Cuicuilco pyramid that was partially covered, the site was covered by the eruption of Xitle, or the Preclassic site of Tetimpa, covered by the eruption of Popocatépetl. These eruptions are very evocative, and many artists and also archaeologists are very imaginative about the way these have impacted the societies. In reality, well, as archaeologists, I'm not familiar with volcanology, and I learned a lot collaborating with Klaus and his team. And it's important to have this communication with geologists to have a better idea of the environmental consequences and the possible social impact of these phenomena. Unfortunately, well, the research of volcanologists and the examples, historical examples or more recent examples of eruptions shows what can happen. And we, of course, have to take into account that the eruptions are very different kinds, and all are not like the Vesuvio and Pompeii style eruption. So it's important to take care about these things. And my talk will focus on northern Michoacán. Like you know, it's part of the Michoacán-Guanajuato volcanic field, a region that have been very well presented in these days. You probably know that this area is the heartland of the Purépecha culture. the main native group of Michoacán area, and I feel interesting that if you see the extension of the Michoacán-Guanajuato volcanic belt, it fits more or less well with the expansion of the Purépecha culture in prehispanic times. So we have to have a reflection how this long-term interaction between these people and the volcanic environment have modeled their way of life, and they have developed a lot of knowledge about how you have to manage volcanism and all the aspects of this, including the symbolic and dialogical aspects of volcanism, as we will see later. We know that the ancestors of actual Purépecha were organized in a very powerful state in the 19th century, in the 16th century. Here is the extension of the Tarascan state that was a rival of Aztecs, and we know that the capital, the last capital was Tzintzuntzan in the Pátzcuaro Lake Basin, but we also know that this period is the end of a very long historical process that begins more or less in 10,000 years before Christ, and with different periods where we have more or less indication of the presence of human population. So during this very long period, that is more or less Holocene period, now we know, thanks to the very systematic and solid work of my colleagues working in the geology of the region, that these people have faced many volcanic eruptions through all this time span. In this map, I located the eruption that corresponds to the last 4 millennia. Why I'm interested of this period? Because it's the period that corresponds to the development of Mesoamerican societies. So in my talk, I will speak about pre-classic when I speak about 150 100 to 0 before Christ, classic period to the first millennia after AD, and post-classic time between 900 to the arrival of the Spanish. So you can see that you have here the two eruptions of Paricutin and Jorullo in historical time, modern times, but you see that the work realized by geologists have dated at least 10 eruptions during the prehispanic times, and it is interesting to notice that Sacapu Basin here shows an important cluster of volcanic eruptions during this time. And another aspect we have to, that is interesting or unfortunate, I think, is that many of the eruptions that were documented, well documented by volcanologists, are in areas where we have almost no information about the archaeology of this area. So we can't study the impact of these eruptions on the pre-Hispanic population that lived in these areas. But we are fortunate to work and to have collaborated in the area of Sacapu, where from 3 decades we have gathered a lot of information, archaeological information, and in the last years we have collaborated with Klaus and have the opportunity to compare the volcanic sequence of eruptions and the archaeological sequence. So, the Sacapu Basin in northern Michoacán, it's an ancient lake that was drained in the beginning of the 20th century, and with a lot of volcanic formation around, with very high diversity of volcanic structures. But what is interesting for us is the concentration of Holocene eruptions, in particular in the northwest of Sacapu city, that is located here. And this is the Malpais of Sacapu, a very extensive lava field that gives his name to the city of Sacapu. In Purépecha language, Sacapu means place of stones. You may understand why they call it like that. And originally, the city of Sacapu was located in the lava floor, not in the bottom like you can observe it now. And Sacapu is a very important region for the history of ancient Tarascans. We know that because of the written sources of the 16th century that indicates that the ancestors of the king that ruled in Tzintzuntzan was originally a Chichimec, part of a Chichimec group that migrated from north, and their first stop was Sacapu. They settled first in Sacapu. And what is interesting is that the main source, the Relación de Michoacán, say that it's in Sacapu, close to, in a mountain that they call Viru Guarapejo. It's a mountain, a volcano located in the area. We don't know what is it, but they say that it is in this place that begins the lordship of the Tarascans. So here we have a relationship between this moment of connection with a volcano of the area and the beginning of lordship. In this area, since the 80s, an archaeological project initiated by Dominique Michelet allows us to gather a lot of information. More than 300 sites, archaeological sites, were located, and a chronological sequence was built that did not exist before. And one of the interesting aspects, too, it's during this project, 4 important cities were located in the lava flows. Now, we are going to see some of them. And 10 years ago, I started to gain a project in the area with the objective to, the aim to understand better when was populated this area of volcanic flows, how they were living there, and why they were living there, the most difficult question. And beside archaeological methods like excavations, ground survey, we have the opportunity to use new methods of investigations and to have an interdisciplinary approach on this landscape. In archaeology, when you have to study the settlement pattern, the evolution of the settlement pattern, you have to map very precisely the sites. Each structure must be located and mapped. And you can imagine, and you know that, you are a geologist, that it's quite difficult, quite a difficult job when you deal with this kind of environment. So some years ago, we have the opportunity to apply LiDAR on the area and to cover almost all the Malpaís de Zacapu. And here I show you just one of the big sites of the area, El Infiernillo. And this is a video that shows, gives you an idea of what LiDAR allows us and show the impressive modification of the surface of the lava flow. And what you can see here is a pyramid. Here is another one. Here is another one. All these squares are houses, hundreds of houses, and a huge modification of the lava flow with roads and platforms and so on that show that these people know to live in this kind of place called Malpaís, because see what means badland. So, one more time. And so you can see the size of the site. And next, please, I think I... No. Yes, and of course, another very important aspect, I'll say, is the study that, the geological study that have been done in the area, in particular the work of Nancy Reyes Guzman on the Malpaís cluster, and using, well, all the geologic methods, but also using LiDAR to generate a a very precise map of the lava flows and dating the eruptions. So I would like to focus on the two aspects. The first one is, what can we say about the impact of volcanic eruptions on the settlement pattern of on the population that were living in the area. Some image that you know about the Paricutin, that we know that many people had to leave the area. Another aspect I would like to focus on is how the ancient people manage this environment after the eruptions have occurred. So I will only talk about two youngest eruptions, the Capastiro eruptions, that is located in the southern part of the Malpaís de Zacapu. You see here the cone of Capastiro and the very large area, 21 square kilometers, and we know, thanks to the geological studies, that the eruption, its duration was about 30 years. That is quite long. So that means that many people, probably 2, 3, 4 generations, can witness this phenomenon. Another interesting aspect that is that probably this eruption have an impact also in the lacustrine basin. As you can see here, there is the land that corresponds to the ancient lake, and here is this area, like white, is called Lomas. It's an area where the lacustrine sediments were elevated probably by the eruption of the Capastiro. It's an hypothesis that deserves to be studied more in detail, but what is interesting is that this area was populated just after the eruption of the Capastiro. In particular, it became a very densely occupied area with an important site that is called Loma Alta. I will speak about this site later. Here is the archaeological map of the area, and the first occupation documented in the area are in this place and occurred after the eruption. That means that it seems that the eruption, if it is responsible to the formation of the lomas, that have favored the human occupation. So it's not always that people go away, but some area are habilitated to occupation. The second eruption is the Malpais Prieto eruption, about 900, and that occurred in the northern edge of the Malpais. It's much smaller. This is a lava flow. You have no cone, it's just a lava flow. And its duration seems to be very short, like 3 years, if I remember well. And, but what is interesting is that it occurs in an area that was highly populated during the classic period, just before the eruption, with very large structure identified, a lot of habitational area. What is interesting is after the phase after the eruption shows a dramatical decrease of population in the area. We have almost nobody at this time, and 3 centuries later, this area was again systematically, largely occupied by the sites I show you, the post-classic site, the post-classic cities that occupy again the area. Now, the second question I would like to address is how ancient Michoacanos manage volcanic landscape, how they use it. And in this aspect, I will not speak about the economic aspects, in particular the resources that was used by ancient people in the area, because some presentation later will deal about that. But here I present the site of Malpais Prieto, where you see that the lava flow was completely modified and the lava stones were used to build temples and houses and so on. Here is the modification related with agriculture and mining activities. But what is interesting too is to see that some ritual activities were performed in relation with volcanoes. And we have many clues about that. First, in the site of Lomalta, I told you that it was settled just after the Capastiro eruption in an island in the lake. And we know, thanks to the excavation and geological and geophysical prospection, realized that this loma, this hill, in reality is a great ceremonial center where different sculptures were found, and in particular, one of the oldest representation of the old god of fire that seems to be related with the cult of volcanoes. Here you have a complete sculpture from Teotihuacan where this god was very important. Other interesting aspect is that during the classic period, we can detect occupation in many important volcanoes, in the top of many important volcanoes. In particular, the Capastiro, the Tule have remains of occupations, and other sites in this part. This is the example of the site located, the ceremonial site located in the Capastiro crater, and here is the site with 4 pyramids and the plaza here, just located in the volcano. In the northern area I showed you, in this area, we have also an interesting complex of ceremonial structures And here is a 3D model of the area. You have here the large dacitic dome complex of Las Flores here, and many lava flows. Here is the Infiernillo. And in this area, we discover many sites of the classic period, late classic period. In particular, one of the more monumental, more important site of the whole region is El Rincón. You can see here, it's 300 meters long, like 200 meters wide, a very large structure located just at the bottom of the Las Flores domes. What is interesting, I think, but it is an ongoing investigation, that we located in different parts of the landscape small ceremonial centers that seems to indicate that there is a network of ceremonial places that make like a symbolic landscape using the volcanoes. We have, for example, the small ceremonial site located just on top of the Las Flores dome. We have also another site in El Coyotillo here, and it's interesting to see that there is an alignment between the main pyramid of El Rincón, Las Flores shrine, and El Coyotillo shrine. And it's also interesting to see that they are aligned with another volcanic cone, Los Cuarterones, and if you take a picture from the shrine of the Las Flores and see watch beyond the east, you can see here, well, there is a tree here, but you can see it, but the Rincón sites, Cuarterones, El Coyotillo, Cerro Pelón, y Alberca de los Espinos, that is a very impressive Mar volcano. So it's interesting because it seems that at this period, people living there try to locate and to appropriate in certain aspect this landscape using the volcanic reliefs as markers of their territories. And it's not surprising in Mesoamerica, because we know that in Mesoamerica, and in particular in central Mexico, people, a polity is designated as an altepetl, as a mountain with water. And the mountain is an important aspect. And we know that in all this area, all mountains are volcanoes. And this is the place where the gods were living and where the people have to make offerings to them, to speak to them, to have the right to exploit this territory and to settle. And here is one of the most famous mountaintop shrine, the Monte Tlaloc shrine, dedicated to Tlaloc, the main rain god of the Aztecs, that is located in this Monte Tlaloc volcano, and aligned with other very big volcanoes like Pico de Orizaba. And so we know that these people use all these volcanoes not just like area to extract materials or, well, I don't know, or to claim, but this space, this volcano were sacred spaces for these people. We'll finish soon. In the Middle Post-Classic, I told you that there is a reoccupation of the area of Malpais with new sites after 3 centuries of abandonment of the area, and we observe a change in the pattern but where here some outcrops of lava outcrops are integrated systematically to the ceremonial sites. No. Here you can see the main pyramid of Malpais Prieto, and behind it there is an area that was leveled, but where they let these mountains, these outcrops that were modified, and some have petroglyphs in them. And we can see this pattern in many other cases, like here. Here you have a normal pyramid, and here you have a pyramid temple backing to a large lava outcrop. This aspect is also documented by historical sources. In the Relación de Michoacán, it is indicated that when they want to make the foundation of a new city, they have to settle the temple in outcrops. And the Relación de Michoacán say that the outcrops were pushed by the god of the hell, of the infra-world god. And we still find a manifestation probably of this tradition in the actuality. You have here a chapel of the Virgin in Turicuaro village, close to Turicuaro village, where you see that rock, volcanic rock, is venerated as an image of the Virgin. So, in conclusion, I wanted to say that we have many aspects we can explore. I think it's a very important aspect in which we can work more with geologists, and I will be happy that when you claim the volcanoes, you don't just look at the rocks, but maybe see if there is some sherds or walls, and you invite us to visit it to have more information of this occupation of the top of the volcanoes. Other aspect that I think it's important to tell here is the patrimonial dimension, the heritage dimension of this area, in particular of the Sakapu area. As I hope I show you, there is a unique archaeological complex of sites with very important cities that and sites that were occupied in different moments, and are intertwined with a volcanic sequence. And on the other side, it's thanks to the fact that these sites were located in the Malpais, they are wonderfully preserved. You can see the pyramids like in every site in Mesoamerica, but you can also see the trails, the smaller house of poor people, of rich people, of everywhere, and it's amazing. I hope some of you inscribed to the field trip, and you can see it for real. Another aspect of this Malpais de Sakapu, for me it's an amazing geological heritage too, with a high, very important dimension, historical and cultural dimension, because as I hope I show you, the ancient Tarascans consider this place as a sacred place where they put the origin of their kingdom. And of course, it's a very nicely preserved environment, place of biodiversity that deserves to be protected. Unfortunately, it is not, and the sites are continuously destroyed by looting. Here is the main pyramid of Malpais Prieto with a large trench. It's quite old, it's not of this time, but you can see, thanks to the lida, the form of a normal pyramid, and here, like destructions completely, sometimes of a pyramid structure. the extraction of scoria are also a problem, but because they destroy part of the cone and can destroy also archaeological evidence that are present in this area. And finally, one of the main problems is the question of the mechanized agriculture, in particular the spread of avocado cultivation in all the areas of Michoacán. In particular, in recent years, we see that they are modifying drastically the surface of the Malpaises area to put avocado. And when you do that with a bulldozer, you destroy everything. So it's a real problem we have now. It's why I insist in the fact that we have to find strategies to protege, to preserve this geo-archaeological heritage, like that this kind of project have been done, like in Cantona, Puebla, an important site located close to Puebla in a volcanic flow, or in San Miguel Regla, and can be a very nice solution to preserve environment, archaeology, volcanism, and to give some option to economic development to communities located here. Thank you very much for your patience.